Maike was right to tell him of Bunlei's hypothesis. The likelihood of the Massive's presence in the structure was next to nothing. They usually came in cycles of 500 or 600 years. Everything depended on the mood of their ambassador. Then again, no one was actually sure if they even had an ambassador. The Massives were still a mysterious race, even after thousands of years of contact that say knew very little about them. How many were there? What was their government structure? Were they expansionist? Did they eat? All deep salvagers like Emin received a brief from a group known as the scifi. Each primary was ordered to secrecy. Breaking that order meant a lifetime in a prison near Uve, the central star, on Garjiam. The Massives were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. During first contact, they relayed a single word to the Tse. It said, "chosen." What that meant was still a mystery. Regardless, if the Massives were back in, say, space, it could mean a great deal for the development of the structure. The merit might be more than the salvage and repair. More of the crew could receive enough to advance. And for a moment, Emin hoped the Massives were around. They liked to trade. They would often bring new technologies in exchange for anything that Tse had developed since their last visit. Garjiam owed its expansion into the starseas to trade with them. If they were back in the Garm, then the society could be launched into another stage of development. Perhaps they would be able to reach beyond the starseas into nearby galaxies. That chart might mean something after all. They might bring new engine technologies, new understandings of time and dimension, or even methods to completely bypass the trickier laws governing multidimensional space. Or they might bring a recipe book. Emin suspected that the Massives had a secret and potent sense of humor. 3,000 years ago, the Tse engaged a Massive near the structure's frontier. 10 frames of constant translating led to a recipe for a stew that no Tse could ever cook. The fat, fuzzy-horned thing they brought had to be put in storage immediately so it wouldn't suffocate. It was still there waiting to be brought out of stasis. The authority had a recording of its voice. It was a ghastly, moo-sounding roar. He had nightmares of it for a week. And that had to be the biggest letdown in history. A section of the wall near his left hand lit up as data arrived. Streams of information describing the nature of the radiation swells were difficult for him to read at first. Bursts of gamma radiation followed by sudden minor gravitational collapses could be the signs of one of the ships plowing through the Garm. Maybe they decided to tear through a star. Rumor had it there was something they liked to do. It didn't seem definitive, though. That was another thing about space travel. Often one thing turned out to be another. False readings were common. Misinterpretations were normal. No conclusions until possibilities were exhausted. The readings from the other sectors in the 5th section ran across the screen. Emin leaned closer to them, occasionally reversing the data to study the information over and over again. There was a strange line in the flow. "What are you?" he murmured. All known bodies in space shared some connection to others. Planets were formed by the destruction of stars and the development of heavy elements. Black holes ejected material into space that could form new nebulae, star systems, or even clusters. There were even observations that showed ejected material could coalesce and then burst in multiple events far from the event horizon in rapid, violent succession. However, there was something odd about the readings. The gamma radiation, the minimal gravitational waves, the collapses were all indeed evidence that the Massives were doing whatever it was they did. However, there was another signature that Emin did not recognize. A swell in that sector gave abnormal readings. John Rung mentioned that the ship registered the event as having multiple bursts of energy. Emin scoured the lines of this information intently, searching for any other abnormalities. The strange line of data described the smaller bursts. It repeated multiple times at different locations and at different moments. It read the exact same at each location. The lines of data should not be identical if they were naturally occurring. Not good. Emin thought aloud. He wasn't staring at a black hole having a fit. The patterns of the burst, the locations around the center of the swell, everything all pointed to one likely scenario. A battle, Emin whispered. He leaned away from the wall and crossed his arms. Authority protocol was clear in this situation. If there was a suspected threat against the structure, the ship that first detected it was to immediately return to Tse space and inform the authority. Damn, Emin spat. He slammed his fist against the seat as he shot up. He was obliged to report the threat to the authority, and as the ship that established first detection, the Sainqevsu would be tasked with the investigation. He would be ordered to take his crew into a potential war zone between 2 or more factions, firing off weapons with readings similar to exploding stars. The Tse did not have anything that powerful. The massives surely did, and it begged a question. Who would force them to use such weapons? Emin pressed his fingers into the wall to dismiss the information. The data had already been sent. The structure would have it in a matter of days. They could look through it all they wanted to. If they came to the same conclusions as Bunlei, then they could send a ship that was closer to that section. The Sainqevsu and its people would not be subjected to a foreign war in safe space. If the massives were still there, if their enemy was still there, then surely the Sainqevsu would be annihilated in the crossfire. Everyone would die. Emin would rather lose all of his merit than have his crew lost because of archaic law. The structure had warships. Let them go and fight, he thought. A chime sounded from the door. "Primary," Jesu called from the outside. "What is it?" "We'll be out of transit in 5 minutes." "I'll be in the bridge in 3. Emin stared towards the ceiling for a time before he made for the door. He thought of a quick story to tell the crew if they asked about the anomalies in the section. If they asked, everything was as it should be. The crew didn't need to know everything. Emin arrived to the bridge just as Jesu took up his position at the navigator's console. The young Xiu toyed with energy patterns as they descended in coated cascades towards a series of silver cones set into the floor. Bits of those patterns flickered in red while others glowed green. As long as none of the streams turned orange, the ship was on the right track. Zhangrong stood at her own console on the opposite side. 2 lines of data repeated their cascades to 3 cones near her feet. One line, smooth and green, denoted the nearest planet to the beacon. The other was a fractured line with occasional streams of orange letters. It meant that the beacon was damaged and in reduced operation. As Emin passed her, he noticed 3 other intermittent signals that flickered in and out of the cascade. Each was white. "What are those?" he asked. "Unknown," she said. "They're small and spread out, likely debris from the beacon or local material. This system does have a lot of stuff floating around. It would take a long time to catalog it all." "Mark as much as you can, then submit," he said. He then made for his position at the fore of the bridge, and with a tap against the wall he accessed the observation pane. Nothing was visible yet. They were still in transit. Light was not detectable within their frame of reference. Jesu announced to the ship, "We will exit transit in 24 seconds. The door to the bridge opened with a low chime. Emin glanced back to see Vosha creep in and take a seat just behind Jesu. "Welcome to the bridge, officer. Anything you wish to complain about?" "Still nothing," Vosha grumbled. "And still nothing." "Not yet," Jesu replied. "Another 8 seconds. Emin looked back to the dark, just in time to see a dull point of light emerge. "First star noted," he said to Zhangrong. "I have it," she replied. "Referenced and submitted." "We have arrived," Emin announced. "Jesu, close the transit. In process. Zhangrong, clear filters." More stars came into view, slowly forming tiny sprites dotting the void. And just to the left, termed second at near first, a burst of silver light erupted in diamond shape. It grew in subtle curves from its core, lapping over itself as it formed a sphere. Its brilliance was far greater than any other star, and it was the local system's center. Much closer to the Sainqevsu, a sharp, vibrant blade of light snaked around the form of a still unseen planet. The crescent's edges appeared vaguely fuzzy through the planet's heavy atmosphere. However, they weren't supposed to be able to see that. If they were in correct position, the planet should be silhouetted with a crown of starlight around the whole of the body. "I believe," said Emin, "that we were supposed to arrive in opposition." And Jesu hastily traced lines on the cascades. His annoyed face quickly became confused. "Nothing has changed. We're right where we're supposed to be. Ship confirmed." Emin turned to Zhangrong. "Your thoughts?" "Possible interference in the spur we avoided. Any undetected radiation may have affected navigation with the false potentials. We are still within the arrival zone, though." "Record the issue for future travelers," Emin ordered. "Done," she replied. "Do we have a signal for the beacon?" "Yes," she answered. "On the far side." "Take us there, navigator," said Emin to Jesu. "Presently." Then, much to Emin's surprise, Vosha stirred from his seat. He turned to see the man skulking towards the fore. "Sit down, officer," he ordered. "If I may," Vosha said quietly. "Stop there and you might." Vosha complied a few steps from Emin's position. "What is it that you need?" If possible. Could we travel on the day side of the planet? Emin was ready to dismiss him from the bridge when he noticed that something had a hold of Vosha. The man was stuck in a gaze that turned his eyes angry. His mouth contorted into a harsher frown than usual, and his near-ruined eye twitched constantly. What's your reason? Survey, Vosha replied. He blinked and then looked to Emin. Visual survey. No materials or energy required. Just look. Yes. And we're set to use that route anyway. Then may I stand near you to see it? 3 steps to the left. You can look from there. Vosha shuffled to the wall, never taking his eyes from the planet as more detail came into view. Emin dismissed his curiosity as that of a city man's first planetary arrival on a bridge. Most men like him liked to lock themselves away in a capsule until they arrived at a terminal to submit for traveler's merit. I have the beacon, John Rung announced, placing its location into navigation. I have it, said Chesu, correcting our course for best intercept. The ship moved without a shudder or sound as it rounded the planet. Emin glanced towards the world to see what Vosha was so upset about. He noticed streaks of ruddy clouds through the pale tan of the atmosphere. It did not seem like much of a world to him. The planet was an average-sized terrestrial world, only slightly larger than Garjiam. It would be regarded as a twin planet. It was not pleasant to see. Emin supposed that meant that it was right to be Garjiam's twin. The surface was covered by streaks of red, brown, and yellow, and even black desert. Vague shapes of weathered impact basins were scattered across the surface. A few mountain ranges cut through the broad, arid plains before ending at a northern depression that was capped with red-streaked ice. An ugly thing, Chesu joked. Yes, it is. He turned to Vosha. How is your survey progressing? Find anything of use for the structure? Getting your merit for the day? Vosha did not answer. He only stood there, gazing towards the surface. He wasn't even breathing. Officer, is there something wrong? John Rung approached from her console. Teiste Uriotsotozi, is there an issue? Do you need medical support? No, Vosha gasped, seemingly knocked back into reality. No, I'm fine. What is it? Chesu nervously asked. Officer, this is irregular, snapped Emin. Primary, Vosha breathed. Primary, for the time being I am finished. If you have need of political counsel, you may find me in my quarters. You have your assignment to see through to its end. And before Emin could demand an explanation, Vosha shot away from the fore, made for the exit. Jonrung tried to speak with him, but he ignored her and fled from the bridge. What was that? Chesu asked, clearly disturbed. I don't know, said Emin. Stay true to course until we come within 20 links to the beacon. He turned to Jongrung. Hold the fore until I return.